I'm Emma. My first big break after college was landing a job at Mason Trading Company as a lawyer's assistant. It was a bustling place, always buzzing with activity and ringing phones that hardly ever stopped. I loved the pace, it kept me on my toes. In those early days, while I was still figuring out which elevator took me where, I ran into Tom. He worked in the purchasing department, just a corridor away from our legal offices. He was arguing over the phone about some shipment that got delayed. He hung up, noticed me watching, and rolled his eyes. "Suppliers," he muttered. "Tough day?" I asked, half smiling. "You could say that. Every day is a battlefield here. You knew?" "Yeah, just started this week. I'm Emma." "Tom. Welcome to the madness. Don't let the chaos scare you off." We started having lunch together, mostly because it was easier to navigate the huge cafeteria with someone who knew the place. Tom was easy to talk to, had a sharp wit, and wasn't shy about saying exactly what he thought. One lunch turned into many, and soon, those lunches turned into after-work drinks. Our conversations ranged from mundane work stuff to more personal topics. I learned he was an only child, adored by his mother, but constantly nagged for not living up to his potential, whatever that meant. "You haven't met my mom yet, but brace yourself when you do," Tom warned one evening as we grabbed beers after a particularly long day. "She has this idea of the perfect woman, and trust me, no one's good enough." It wasn't long before our friendship took a romantic turn. After about a year of dating, Tom proposed. The wedding was simple, but perfect, for us. We bought an apartment together with savings I had from my grandma and his savings. It felt like everything was falling into place. Life with Tom was mostly smooth, except for the occasional bickering about who forgot to buy milk or whose turn it was to clean the apartment. But nothing too heavy, just the usual stuff couples go through. Until one day, everything felt different. I was exhausted all the time, and even the smell of coffee, which I loved, made me nauseous. One morning, struggling to even get out of bed, I decided enough was enough. I booked an appointment with my doctor, thinking maybe I had the flu or something. Sitting in the waiting room, flipping through a magazine without really reading it, my name was finally called. Dr. Lena was always straight to the point, and after a few questions and tests, she dropped the news. "Well, Emma, congratulations are in order. You're pregnant." "Pregnant?" I repeated, the word foreign and heavy. "Are you sure?" "Quite sure," Dr. Lena smiled, handing me the test result. "But you need to be careful. Your body's signaling a few warning signs. Nothing too scary, but you need rest, less stress." I nodded, my mind racing. Pregnant. How would Tom react? I couldn't tell over the phone. This needed a face-to-face. Walking through the door of our apartment that evening, I found Tom on the couch, eyes glued to his phone. "Tom, we need to talk," I said, my voice shaky. "I went to the doctor today. We're going to have a baby." Tom's face changed. It wasn't the reaction I'd hoped for. "A baby? Emma, it's not great timing, you know? We haven't even traveled like we talked about. And a baby? That's a huge change." I felt a pang in my heart. "I know it's unexpected, but it's also kind of amazing, right? We're going to be parents." Tom ran his hands through his hair, a sign he was stressed. "I don't know, Emma. It's too much. It's too soon." "Too soon for a family with me?" I asked, hurt coloring my tone. "No, that's not what I mean. I just thought we'd have more time, just us two." The conversation went in circles. Tom saying it was bad timing, me trying to highlight the positive. By the end of it, Tom had closed off, and I was left feeling alone, holding on to a piece of news that should have brought us together but instead was pushing us apart. The next day, I spoke to my boss, Mr. Harlow. I needed some accommodation, given the doctor's orders. "Mr. Harlow, I need to ask for a change. I'm pregnant, and there are some complications. Could I possibly work from home?" Mr. Harlow, who was always more understanding than I gave him credit for, didn't hesitate. Of course, Emma. We'll set up everything you need at home. Take care of yourself and the little one. Going home that day, I hoped Tom had softened a bit. But when I told him about the remote work arrangement, his reaction was cold. So, you're just going to be home now? What about all the plans we had? I thought you'd be happy I found a solution to keep the stress down, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Emma, it's like you're not even listening. I said it's too soon for all this, Tom snapped back. I went to bed early that night, feeling the distance between us grow. As I lay there, the reality of my situation sinking in, I realized this journey was going to be tougher than I thought. The air in our apartment felt heavier these days, like each day was a cloudy one, even if the sun was shining outside. Tom's affection seemed to drain away as quickly as it came. He grew more distant, more irritated by the small ways my life had to change because of the pregnancy. He said he felt neglected, like he was second to my health and the baby's needs. His mom, Mrs. Blackwell, was no help either. She called one afternoon, her voice as cold as the winter wind. Emma, this child. It's not the right time. You should be focusing on supporting Tom, not dragging him into fatherhood. I clenched the phone tighter, fighting the sting in my eyes. It's not like I planned this by myself, Mrs. Blackwell. It's our child, not just mine. There are options, you know. You're just choosing the most selfish one. Her words sliced through me, leaving me feeling hollow inside. As if that wasn't enough, Tom's behavior started changing even more. His cologne was masked by another scent, a woman's perfume, unfamiliar and sweet, clinging to his clothes. The first time I smelled it, I convinced myself it was a mix-up at the dry cleaner. But then, it happened again. And again. He also started staying out late, mumbling about needing to catch up on work, and his weekends were booked up with sudden business trips. It was too much to chalk up to coincidence. I held my tongue, not wanting to believe the worst, but the seed of doubt was planted. I couldn't ignore it anymore. That Saturday, when Tom mentioned another business trip, I reached out to Mike, an old classmate who now worked as a detective. We met at a small cafe, the kind where you could talk without every table overhearing your conversation. Mike slid a folder across the table to me. I got what you asked for, Emma. You sure you want to see this? I nodded, not trusting my voice, and opened the folder. The photos were clear, unmistakable. There was Tom, and with him, a woman I recognized from his office, a new hire that he'd mentioned in passing. Emma, I'm sorry, Mike said, his voice low. There's video too. It's consistent. My heart sank to the soles of my feet. Thanks, Mike. I needed to know. I went home, numb and carrying the folder like it was made of lead. As I turned the key in the lock, the door swung open. Mrs. Blackwell stood there, her face twisted in disapproval. I came to see how you are. Tom said he's worried about you, all alone here. Her eyes darted around, suspiciously. I know about Tom. He's not on a business trip. He's with someone else, Mrs. Blackwell. She scoffed, her defense quick and sharp. You're driving him away. Always sick, complaining, needing things. What man wants that? That's no excuse for cheating, I shot back, anger rising. And you think having his baby will fix things? No one in the family wants this child, Emma. Only you. Her words were like a physical blow. Get out, I said, my voice trembling. Now. She threw her hands up and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The silence after was deafening. I sat on the couch, feeling numb and hollow. 30 minutes felt like an eternity as each second passed with heavy, painful ticks, echoing the throbbing in my heart. My mind was racing, but a dreadful resolve settled over me. I had to face Tom and see the truth with my own eyes. Mike had given me all the details I needed. There at the Grandview Hotel, room 718, he'd said, his voice filled with reluctant professionalism. My hands were shaking slightly as I parked the car and walked into the hotel lobby, my stomach in knots. I took the elevator, my heart pounding in my ears with each floor it passed. When the doors opened, I stepped out into a brightly lit hallway that felt too cheery for what I was about to do. Room 718 was just down the hall, and as I approached, I could hear laughter and the clinking of glasses. My hand trembled as I knocked on the door. "Room service must be here with the champagne," I heard a woman's voice, chirpy and carefree. After a few seconds that felt like hours, the door swung open. Tom looked out, his expression changing from anticipation to shock in an instant. "Emma? What? How did you find?" "I know everything, Tom," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. Without waiting for an invitation, I pushed past him into the room. The sight that greeted me was like a slap. There she was, his mistress, half-dressed, scrambling to cover up as if modesty meant anything now. Tom recovered from his initial shock and his face hardened. "Why are you here, Emma? To spy on me? To beg?" "Beg?" I echoed, incredulous, feeling a bitter laugh rise in my throat. "I came for the truth, not that you'd know anything about that." He scoffed, stepping closer. "You want the truth? Here it is. I'm not happy with you anymore. You're always so wrapped up in yourself and this baby." His mistress, now somewhat dressed, smirked and added, "Maybe if you paid more attention to him, he wouldn't be with me." Her words stung, but it was his agreement, the nod he gave her, that twisted the knife deeper. "Yeah, you should be thanking us. We're just waiting for your baby to be born. Then I can finally move on properly." The room spun around me, and a sharp pain stabbed through my abdomen. I doubled over, gasping, the shock and pain mingling into a nauseating swirl. "Tom, I think something's wrong," I managed to say, my voice a whisper of desperation. "Please, call an ambulance." He and his mistress exchanged a look, a quick, dismissive glance, and then he turned back to me. "You're probably just overreacting, like always." They dressed quickly, stepping over me as if I were just another obstacle in their path. The last thing I saw before darkness claimed me was the closing door, the click of it shutting echoing ominously in the cold, empty room. I woke up to the gentle, yet urgent, voice of a maid trying to rouse me. Ma'am, can you hear me?" Her face swam into view as I blinked away, the darkness clouding my vision. The pain was still there, a dull ache that seemed to echo through my entire body. "Where am I?" My voice sounded hoarse, foreign even to my own ears. "You're still in the hotel room, dear. I found you on the floor. I'm calling an ambulance now." True to her word, the next thing I knew, I was being wheeled through the emergency room. The hospital lights were harsh, blinding, as nurses and doctors swarmed around, their voices a cacophony of concern that I could barely comprehend. They asked questions, too many questions, but all I could think about was the betrayal and the pain. Tom never showed up at the hospital. Neither did his mother. Calls went unanswered, their silence more painful than any physical wound. By the time the doctor came with the news that I had lost the baby, the grief was so heavy, so overwhelming, it was all I could do not to scream. The loss was not just a personal tragedy, it felt like an injustice, one that Tom, his mistress, and his mother had a hand in. They had abandoned me, left me alone at my most vulnerable. The bitterness and anger stewed inside me, brewing a storm. After what felt like an eternity, the hospital discharged me. I drove straight to our apartment and began packing Tom's things. Each shirt I folded, each sock I threw into the box, was a severance, a cutting of ties. With his belongings piled in the trunk of my car, I drove to Mrs. Blackwell's house. I didn't bother with niceties. I unloaded his things right in the driveway, letting them fall wherever they may. I didn't knock, I just walked in. Mrs. Blackwell was sitting in the living room, a look of resignation on her face. She knew why I was there. "Emma," she started, her tone weary, "you should just leave. Take what dignity you have left." "Dignity?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You think I came here for a lecture on dignity from you? He's my son. I stand by him. And he will be better off without you," she said bluntly. "He has excellent lawyers." You'll only embarrass yourself. At that, something snapped inside me. Do you even care that your grandchild is gone? That your son left me alone in a hotel room to lose his child? Her eyes flickered away, unable to meet mine. It's a tough situation. It's done, Emma. I stepped closer, my voice low and steady. How did you feel, as a mother, knowing what happened? Knowing your grandchild was lost? She didn't answer, just looked away, a crack in her composed facade. I will see your son in court, I said, the words heavy with promise. You can tell him that. Turning on my heel, I left her sitting there, alone with the weight of her choices. As I walked back to my car, the cool air felt sharp against my skin, but my path had never been clearer. I would fight. Not just for me, but for the life that was lost, and for the truth that needed seeing the light of day. Stepping into the courthouse, I felt every eye on me, or maybe it was just the weight of what was about to happen pressing down. My best friend from college, Lucy, was right beside me. She'd become a shark in the courtroom, known for tearing apart even the slickest defense. When I told her about everything, she didn't hesitate. I've got this, Emma. And don't worry about the fees. This one's on me, Lucy had said, her voice fierce and reassuring. We sat at our table, papers neatly arranged, evidence at the ready. Across from us, Tom and his mistress looked confident, a smugness that irked me. As the proceedings began, their lawyer painted a picture of me as unstable, broken by grief into fabricating stories. The plaintiff has suffered immense emotional distress, yes, which has led to these wild accusations. There is no substantial evidence of any affair or wrongdoing on my client's part. When it was our turn, Lucy stood, her presence commanding the room. Your Honor, not only do we have substantial evidence, but we also have a testimony that will corroborate everything my client has claimed. She presented the photos first, clear and undeniable proof of the affair, passed around for the judge and eventually to the opposing counsel who looked visibly shaken as they viewed them. Next, Lucy played the video from the hotel. The room fell silent as the scene played out. I enter the hotel, then Tom and his mistress, laughing, hugging, leave the hotel without a hint of concern. But that's not all, Lucy continued. She called the maid who found me to the stand. Her testimony was simple, but powerful. I found her on the floor, unconscious. They were gone. She could have died. Tom's face had gone white, and his mistress couldn't sit still, her leg bouncing nervously. When they were given a chance to respond, Tom stood up, his voice shaky. This isn't how it looks. We were just scared and confused. Scared? So you leave your pregnant wife unconscious on the floor? Lucy shot back, her tone icy. The judge took everything into consideration, the weight of the evidence, the testimonies. After what felt like a lifetime, he spoke. I find in favor of the plaintiff, Emma Blackwell. The evidence of infidelity and negligence is overwhelming. I am granting a 50-50 division of all marital assets, as well as financial compensation for the emotional distress caused by the actions of the defendants. As we walked out of the courtroom, Lucy elbowed me gently, a victorious glint in her eye. How's that for justice? I managed a small smile, feeling a mix of relief and sorrow. Thanks, Lucy. I couldn't have done this without you. Life had been limping back to normal after the courtroom drama. I bought a small apartment, and every new piece of furniture, every picture hung, was a step away from my past torment. The only shadow that loomed over my fresh start was seeing Tom and his mistress together at work, a constant reminder of the betrayal. One afternoon, as I was sorting through some legal briefs, my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in a while. It was Tom's mother, Mrs. Blackwell. Emma, could we meet? I need to talk to you. Her voice trembled over the phone. I hesitated, memories of our last encounter flashing through my mind. Why should I meet you, Mrs. Blackwell? It's about Tom and your company. Please, I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. Curiosity piqued and a bit of old loyalty to the company that stood by me, I agreed. We met at a small cafe, away from prying eyes. She looked worn, her eyes rimmed with red, as if she had been crying. Tom, he's not the boy I raised anymore, she started, not meeting my eyes. He and that woman, they're planning to cheat the company, sell off assets, and they want to force me out of my home. Her words hung heavy between us. I was still processing when she grabbed my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. Please, you're the only one I can trust to stop this. The plea in her eyes was real, but so was my reluctance. Mrs. Blackwell, your family drama is not my business anymore. It's not just family, Emma. It's your company too. They're planning something big. It could ruin everything. Her urgency struck a chord. I was, after all, part of that company. It had given me a chance when I was just a college grad, and many of my colleagues were like family. All right, I'll look into it, I conceded, more for the company than for her. Back at work, I started digging. I quietly pulled records and contracts, tracing the trail of transactions Tom and his mistress were involved in. It didn't take long to spot irregularities. The numbers didn't add up, goods were being purchased at inflated prices, far above market value. Armed with evidence, I made my way to the director's office. Laying the documents on his desk, I watched his eyes narrow as he scanned the evidence. This is serious, Mr. Harlow stated flatly, looking up at me. I'll handle this from here. Thank you, Emma. You may have just saved this company from a significant loss. Leaving his office, I felt a mix of relief and anticipation. Walking past Tom and his mistress, I caught snippets of their mocking laughter. I couldn't help but smile to myself. Justice had a way of finding its path, no matter how twisted the road might be. After exposing Tom and his mistress, a full-scale investigation rippled through the company. As it unfolded, I was often called to testify, detailing every discrepancy and irregular transaction I had uncovered. The courtroom once again became a familiar setting, but this time I stood confidently, bolstered by the truth and the mountains of evidence that supported our claims. The legal battles were intense and draining. Tom and his mistress faced the consequences head-on. The company, having suffered significant potential losses, pursued justice relentlessly, culminating in a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against the duo. The verdict was as expected, guilty. The court's decision barred them from holding any senior positions in the future, a fitting end to their corporate malfeasance. Amidst the chaos, my own career took a surprising but welcome turn. The company recognized my efforts and promoted me to a senior lawyer, an acknowledgement that came with a significant award. One quiet afternoon, as I was organizing files in my new office, a spacious room with a view of the city skyline, my phone rang. The screen displayed a number I hadn't seen in a long while. Mrs. Blackwell. Emma, it's me, her voice came through, tinged with humility, a stark contrast to our last encounters. I wanted to thank you for saving my home from being sold out from under me. Her gratitude was genuine, and despite everything, I felt a twinge of sympathy for her. You're welcome. I did what I felt was right. There was a pause, a breath of silence, before she added, I was wrong about you, Emma. So very wrong. I used to think you didn't deserve my son, but I've come to realize it was he who didn't deserve you. Her words, unexpected and raw, took me by surprise. Thank you for saying that. It means more than you might know. Could we meet? I'd like to apologize properly, face to face, she suggested, a hint of hope in her tone. I considered her request. All right, Mrs. Blackwell. Let's meet. We decided on a quiet cafe, neutral ground, for what was to be a frank conversation. Sitting across from her, I saw the changes the months had wrought on her. Gone was the haughty demeanor, replaced by a somber reflectiveness. Emma, I'm sorry for everything. I was blinded by my own expectations, my own desires for Tom, that I couldn't see the truth. You were always the stronger person, and I admire that deeply now, she confessed, her eyes not meeting mine. It's been a tough journey for us all, I acknowledged, my voice steady. But your apology is accepted, Mrs. Blackwell. We talked more, about life, about lessons learned. It was clear that friendship wasn't on the table, but mutual respect hung in the balance, a fine thread that connected our shared history. Leaving the cafe, I felt lighter, as if her words had lifted some of the shadows of the past. I walked back to my office, past the now empty desks of Tom and his mistress, a reminder of the bullet dodged. Their laughter no longer echoed through the halls. Instead, my own steps sounded a steady beat towards the future. Hi there, I'm Ava. I work as an insurance agent, a job that keeps me glued to my desk or on the phone most days. I live in a cozy house that my grandma left me when she passed. It's a bit old-fashioned but filled with memories and comfort. My life's pretty routine: work, home, a bit of gardening, and then some more work. Dating? Who's got the time? After another long day filled with claims and paperwork, the loneliness of the big, quiet house really hit me. That's when I thought, why not try online dating? I took a couple of decent pics in front of the house and some from my trips to Europe last summer, slapped them up on a dating site, and hoped for the best. Barely had I refreshed the page when a message popped up. It was from Ethan. His profile showed a guy with a confident smile, standing in a garage full of cars. The caption said he ran his own car repair shop. Just my type, a guy who knew how to handle tools. We hit it off right from our first chat. Ethan was straightforward, no airs about him. He said, "Hey Ava, I see you've been to Italy. Got any good travel stories?" I laughed, typing back quickly. If getting lost in Venice and ending up on a private gondola counts, then yeah, loads. Sounds like my kind of adventure, he replied. And just like that, we kept messaging back and forth. He had a sense of humor that made even a bad day good. Our first date was at a local diner. Nothing fancy, just good burgers and fries. When I saw him waiting outside, leaning against his beat-up truck, he waved and grinned. It was easy to smile back. The conversation flowed as smoothly as the milkshakes we ordered. Ethan was all about his shop and the cars, and I shared tales from the insurance battlefield. But when he talked about his family, his tone changed a bit. I owe a lot to my mom, you know? She raised me by herself. I didn't think much of it then. I was too caught up in his stories, his laughter, and the way his eyes lit up when he talked about his latest car restoration. By the end of the evening, I was glad I took the plunge into online dating. Ethan was a breath of fresh air, someone who seemed genuinely into the things I cared about. We made plans to meet again, and I went home feeling something I hadn't in a while: excitement. The more we dated, the closer we got, and it didn't take long before we were talking about a future together. He was easy to love, with his quick smiles and the way he'd fix anything that broke around my house, just like he promised. But as our wedding day neared, Ethan dropped a bit of a bombshell on me. "You know, Ava, my mom and I are really close," he said one evening as we were scrolling through potential wedding venues on his laptop. "I mean, she's pretty much my best friend." I smiled, finding his devotion sweet. "That's really nice, Ethan. It's good to see a man who cares about his family." "Yeah, she's been through a lot, just us two for so many years. She means the world to me." He glanced at me, maybe checking to see if I was okay with this level of attachment. "Of course, I get it," I reassured him, squeezing his hand. I met Maggie a week later at her quaint little house that seemed frozen in another era. Ethan had hyped up how much she was going to love me. But the reality? It was like hitting a wall of ice. She was polite, sure, but there was a stiffness to her smile, a reserve in her hello. During dinner, I tried to make conversation, really I did. "This casserole is delicious, Maggie. Ethan told me you're the best cook." But Maggie turned to Ethan, ignoring my attempt. "Ethan, did you look into that garage space for rent down by Baker's Street?" I sat there, stirring my food around the plate, feeling more like a spectator than a part of the family. It didn't get any better as the night went on. Each attempt I made to draw her out was met with brief answers and swift diversions back to Ethan. On our drive home, I couldn't help but express my frustration. "Does your mom not like me?" I felt like she didn't really want to talk to me at all tonight. Ethan was quick to defend her. "Nah, she's just not very good with new people. Give her time, she'll warm up to you. I wanted to believe him. I really did. So, I brushed it off and focused on the wedding plans. But every visit after that was a repeat performance. Maggie's warmth surfaced only when she wanted to know about my financial stability or the house I lived in. So, Ava, Maggie began one afternoon, a sudden interest lighting up her face as we discussed the wedding guest list. This house you live in, it's the one you inherited from your grandmother, right? Yes, it's been in the family for years, I said, cautious but trying to keep the conversation friendly. And I suppose you have everything sorted out with your finances? Savings and such? Her eyes were sharp, assessing. I stiffened, feeling like I was under a microscope. Yes, I've been very careful with my finances. That's good, that's good. It's important to have a solid foundation, especially in a marriage, she added, her gaze flickering between Ethan and me. The conversation drifted back to mundane wedding details, but the seed of unease was planted. Maggie's questions lingered in my mind, painting my thoughts with doubt. What was her angle? Was she just being overly protective, or was there something more calculating beneath her questions? Ethan seemed oblivious to these subtleties, always smoothing over any awkwardness with a joke or a change of topic. Mom's just being mom, he'd laugh whenever I brought up how she made me feel. As the wedding day drew near, the excitement I felt was tinged with nerves, not just about the big day, but about everything that was becoming increasingly complicated with Ethan's family. A question that had been nagging at me finally slipped out one evening while Ethan and I were checking off items on our to-do list. Ethan, how come your dad isn't on the guest list? I asked, trying to sound casual, but I was genuinely curious. He looked up from his list, a frown briefly crossing his face. My dad? Ava, he left us when I was just a kid. He made his choice, Ava. I don't see any reason to drag up the past now. I nodded, respecting his feelings, but something didn't sit right with me. It felt like there was more to the story, and on a whim, I decided to dig a little deeper. Using a bit of my insurance sleuthing skills, I managed to find a contact number for Ethan's dad, Michael. The next day, while Ethan was at work, I made the call, my heart racing as it rang. Hello? The voice on the other end was cautious, reserved. Hi, Michael? My name's Ava. I'm Ethan's fiancée. We're getting married soon, and I thought you should know. I stumbled through my introduction. There was a pause, a heavy silence that made me think he might just hang up. But then he spoke, his voice laced with a mixture of surprise and something else I couldn't quite place. Ava, that's news. But listen, I think it's best if I stay out of it. Ethan's made it clear he doesn't want me in his life. His words were calm but firm, yet he added something that sent chills down my spine. Just be careful, Ava. With him and his mother. There's more going on there than you might realize. I stood there for a moment, phone in hand, bewildered. Was he just a bitter ex-husband and father, or was there really something I needed to be wary of? Shaking off the unease, I decided he must just be a little out of his mind, as Ethan had implied. The wedding day arrived, and it was like a dream. Everything was perfect, from the weather to the flowers. But even the most beautiful day couldn't keep the shadows at bay. Maggie, Ethan's mother, was a force to be reckoned with. From the moment the ceremony started, she was ever present, hovering close to Ethan, adjusting his tie, whispering in his ear. At the reception, I hoped we could finally have our moment, but Maggie had other plans. When it came time to cut the cake, she brushed past me, a tight smile on her face. I'll handle this, dear, she said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. I am the main hostess, after all. I watched, stunned, as she took the knife and started slicing the cake, her other hand possessively on Ethan's shoulder. The guests clapped, but the applause felt hollow. I felt more like a guest at my own wedding than the bride. Throughout the evening, Maggie made sure to position herself prominently in every photo, always inserting herself between Ethan and me. Her laughter was forced, her joy seemingly more about her victory in maintaining control than about our happiness. Ethan and I settled into my grandmother's house. Everything was going smoothly, or so I thought, until the dynamic shifted dramatically with Maggie's regular intrusions. Every weekend, we'd go over to Maggie's for dinner, and it was like stepping into a minefield. She was all sweet smiles to Ethan while serving up a side of snide remarks to me. "Ava, try the roast. You might learn a thing or two about cooking," she'd say, her voice dripping with a sarcasm that made my skin crawl. Ethan would just chuckle, clueless, or maybe just unwilling to catch the barbs. "Mom's right. Nobody cooks like her," he'd laugh, completely missing the tension. One Sunday, as she filled Ethan's plate with a heap of mashed potatoes, she shot me a look that could chill coffee. "Darling, make sure Ava takes some notes. She might finally get it right." Ethan roared with laughter, not seeing the hurt in my eyes. "Good one, Mom." 3 months into our marriage, I came home from work to find Maggie on my doorstep, her suitcases piled beside her like some fortress wall. "Ava, dear, I'm feeling unwell, and it's just not safe for me to be alone anymore. I hope you don't mind if I stay here for a while." Before I could even process the request, Ethan came rushing over, wrapping his arms around her. "Of course, Mom. You're always welcome here." Just like that, she moved in. It was as if I had no say in my own home. Maggie took over the house with an iron fist and a velvet glove for Ethan. She did nothing around the house, claiming her health was too frail, leaving me to pick up the slack. My home quickly felt more like a prison, and Maggie was the warden. In the evenings, the living room turned into their private club. They'd watch TV together while I was left to my own devices, feeling more like a ghost than a wife in my own home. Weekends were even worse. They'd go shopping without me, as if I didn't exist. One evening, I gathered my courage at dinner. As we sat at the table, I tried to keep my voice steady. "Maggie, do you have any idea when you might be feeling better? To maybe go back home?" The room fell deathly silent. Ethan's fork clattered to his plate as he stared at me, his face contorting in anger. "Are you trying to kick my mom out?" he exploded, his voice filling the room with a cold fury I hadn't seen before. "No, Ethan, that's not what I meant. I was just asking because..." But he didn't let me finish. He stormed off to his room, slamming the door behind him. Maggie sat there, a smug smile playing on her lips, her eyes gleaming with triumph. "Looks like you put your foot in it, dear," she taunted, her voice low and menacing. I sat there, stunned and alone, the clinking of cutlery echoing my shaking hands. What was happening? How had my life turned into this nightmare? One morning, I was pulling out my favorite blouse for work when I noticed it looked off. The color was faded, the fabric rough, and the seams slightly torn. Puzzled, I dug through my wardrobe and found more of my clothes in similar states of ruin. "That's odd," I muttered to myself, examining a particularly discolored sweater. Maggie, who was always buzzing around, chimed in with a too-sweet tone. "Oh, dear, that's my fault. I mixed up the laundry last week, must have used the wrong detergent. You know how it is, these things happen." Her words dripped with faux concern, but the glint in her eyes said otherwise. It was clear, this was no accident. This was on purpose. And sure enough, none of Ethan's clothes showed any signs of damage. When I confronted Ethan about it later that day, his reaction was dismissive at best. "You know how Mom is. She's getting older, mistakes happen. Looks like you're not taking good enough care of your stuff, Ava." His words stung, and I felt a cold realization settling in. I was alone in this. As days turned into weeks, more of my things started to mysteriously deteriorate. My favorite lipstick found smashed, my skincare creams diluted, Maggie's tactics grew bolder. The strain was unbearable, and one evening, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Ethan, this can't be a coincidence anymore. Your mother, she's doing this on purpose. She's ruining my things," I exclaimed, my voice tinged with desperation. He looked at me, his expression unreadable. Then, after a moment, he sighed. "Look, Ava, maybe you need a break from all this stress." "Hey, I know, I've got just the thing," I got us a gift, a weekend trip, a mountain hike. It'll be good for you. My heart lifted at the idea. Really? Just the two of us? That sounds wonderful, Ethan. His face shifted uncomfortably. Well, actually, I was thinking, it could be a great chance for you and Mom to patch things up. She's excited about the trip too. My heart sank. You want me to go hiking with your mother? After everything? It's either that or you don't really care about making our family work, he shot back, a harsh edge to his voice that I hadn't heard before. I was trapped. So, I agreed, defeated and utterly drained. When I told Maggie, her response was unnervingly cheerful. That sounds lovely, dear. We'll have such a good time. She beamed, her satisfaction evident. That night, as I packed my backpack, the weight of what lay ahead felt heavier than any mountain gear. The thought of spending days in the wilderness with Maggie was daunting. The morning of the hike was crisp and cool, the air fresh with the scent of pine and earth. As we set out with our group, Maggie seemed unusually pleasant, chatting with other hikers and even sharing jokes. For the first few hours, everything went smoothly. The scenery was breathtaking, with vast landscapes stretching out under a brilliant blue sky. Maggie kept pace and didn't complain, which eased some of my tension. Maybe, just maybe, this could be a new beginning for us. However, as the terrain became more challenging, Maggie began to slow down, her breaths turning heavy. Ava, darling, I need to rest for a bit. Go on, I'll catch up. She gasped, stopping to lean against a boulder. I'll stay with you for a bit. We can go slow, I said, settling next to her. After a short rest, we attempted to catch up with the group, but Maggie's pace was slow, and it wasn't long before we were alone. The sounds of our companions faded into the distance. How far do you think they've gone? Maggie asked, her voice tinged with worry. Please check from that rock over there. You might get a better view. As I climbed the rock, focused on locating our group, I felt a sudden, sharp shove from behind. My feet lost their grip, and I tumbled forward, the ground rushing up to meet me as I blacked out. When I regained consciousness, the pain hit me like a wave. My arms were scraped and bruised, throbbing with each heartbeat. Worse, my leg was twisted at an odd angle, pain flaring with even the slightest movement. Panic set in as I realized Maggie was gone, along with my backpack that had my phone, water, and food. Maggie! I screamed, hoping she was nearby, that this was some terrible mistake. But there was no answer, just the rustle of leaves and the distant call of a bird. As dusk approached, I knew I couldn't stay on the ground, the risk of wild animals was too real. Wincing with every movement, I managed to pull myself onto a large rock, where I spent a chilling, miserable night, shivering and waiting for dawn. At first light, I forced myself off the rock, pain shooting through my leg. I had to find our trail, had to get back to where the bus would meet us. Every step was agony, but the thought of being left behind drove me forward. Hours passed, each one a test of my will. Finally, I heard voices. A group of hikers appeared like a mirage through my tears of pain and relief. Help, please, I need help, I cried out, my voice hoarse. They didn't waste time with more questions. One of them radioed for help while the others made me as comfortable as they could. Eventually, rescue services arrived, and I was transported to a hospital, the pain a constant companion. I woke up to the sterile whiteness of the hospital room, the beeping of machines punctuating the silence. My injuries ached, but the pain was dulled by relief. I was alive, rescued, and far from the perilous cold of the mountain. Tears of happiness rolled down my cheeks, not just from the pain, but from the sheer joy of survival. With trembling fingers, I reached for the phone on the bedside table. My first call was to Ethan. My heart pounded as I dialed the number from memory, rehearsing the words in my mind. He needed to know the truth about his mother, about what happened. Ethan, it's me, I started, my voice quivering. I need to tell you something important. Your mom, she pushed me off a rock and left me there. His response came fast and fierce, a torrent of anger that I hadn't anticipated. You're lying, he yelled into the phone. My mom told me everything. She said you abandoned her up there and faked your injuries. How could you accuse her of such a thing? I'm not lying, Ethan. It's the truth. She left me there alone. My plea cracked with emotion. You're just trying to tear us apart. I can't believe you'd stoop this low. You know what? I don't want to see you. I want a divorce. His words were like daggers, and before I could respond, he hung up. Stunned, I lay back against the pillows. His words echoed in my mind, a harsh reminder of the tangled web I was caught in. As I processed the shock, a thought surfaced, the warnings from Ethan's father, Michael. Maybe he would understand, maybe he could help. I found his number and dialed with shaky hands. Michael, it's Ava. I need to talk to you, it's urgent, I said as soon as he answered. He was at the hospital within the hour, his expression grave. We sat in the small, cramped space of the hospital room, and I told him everything. Michael listened intently, his brow furrowed in concern. When I finished, he sighed deeply. I've always known she was too attached to Ethan, but this is something else. She once tried to harm me too, did something to my car brakes. Wanted Ethan to have everything. Why didn't you go to the police? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I had no proof, just suspicions. Nothing concrete enough to take to the authorities, he explained, his voice heavy with regret. We need to do something, Michael. We can't let her get away with this, I insisted, the resolve hardening in my voice. That night, lying in the dim glow of the hospital room, I called my mother. It took some persuasion, but she agreed to play a part in the plan we were forming. Mom, just casually mention to Ethan that I'm dying. Say the injuries were worse than they thought. I instructed her, my voice low. The morning after my call with my mother, the hospital room's door swung open. I braced myself as Ethan and Maggie strode in, their faces a mix of faux concern and barely concealed eagerness. I lay there, my breathing shallow, feigning the brink of death as we had planned. Oh, Ava, you look terrible, Maggie said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy, but her eyes glinting with something akin to triumph. I moaned weakly, keeping my eyes half closed as Ethan hovered by the bedside, his expression conflicted but mostly impatient. Maggie leaned closer, lowering her voice, but not enough. Everything's going as planned, Ethan. Soon, all this, her house, her money, it'll all be yours. Ethan glanced around nervously before kissing his mother on the cheek. I'm so tired of all this drama, he muttered. It'd be easier if she just went quickly. My heart pounded at their words, a mixture of fear and fury coursing through me, but I held still, waiting for the final piece to fall into place. And to think, Maggie chuckled quietly, her cold breath brushing my face. It was so easy to push her off that cliff. She actually thought I was tired. And when I told the others she'd gone back on another bus, they believed it. That was the moment Michael chose to enter, his timing perfect. Got all that, have you? He announced loudly, holding up his phone, which had been recording their conversation. The color drained from Ethan and Maggie's faces as they realized what had happened. Ethan's mouth opened and closed, no sound coming out, while Maggie's initial shock quickly morphed into a scowl. She made a move as if to snatch the phone, but Michael stepped back, blocking her path. The police are on their way, Michael stated firmly. I sat up then, throwing off the guise of weakness. And here's something else for you, I said, holding out the divorce papers to Ethan. His shock turned to horror as he took the documents, his hands shaking. You'll pay for everything. All of it, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. Ethan turned to his father, desperation in his voice. You can't let them lock me up, Dad. You'd have no one left. Michael's expression was one of utter disdain. Actually, I will have someone. Ava's pregnant. And I will make sure my grandchild and Ava have everything they need. The revelation hit everyone like a bolt. Ethan staggered as if struck, his face ashen, while Maggie's eyes widened in disbelief. Before more could be said, the police arrived. They listened briefly to Michael's explanation, checked his recording, and then handcuffed Ethan and Maggie. As they were led away, the reality of their situation finally seemed to dawn on them. In the months that followed, the trial was swift. The evidence was undeniable, and both Ethan and his mother were sentenced to significant terms. The house became peaceful again, and with Michael's support, I prepared for the new life I was about to bring into the world. When my son was born, it was with a sense of relief and renewal. Michael was there, beaming, as he held his grandson for the first time. "He's going to have a good life," he promised, and I believed him. Life as a marketer was a relentless race, but I was good at it, really good. My name's Lucy, and by the time I hit 33, I had nailed down almost everything I'd set my sights on, including buying my own place. Only a couple of payments left and the apartment would officially be mine. No time for slowing down, though, not even for romance. That is, until I bumped into Jack. Jack was one of those rare guys who seemed to have popped right out of some dreamy fiction, where chivalry wasn't dead. We met at a local coffee shop, both of us reaching for the last blueberry muffin. He let me have it, but not without securing my number as a trade-off. Smart guy. From then on, it was like a fast-forward montage from a movie. Dates flowed into weekends away, and gifts started appearing on my doorstep, nothing extravagant, but always thoughtful. He had this knack for remembering things I mentioned in passing, my favorite author, that I loved tulips over roses, or how I preferred my coffee. It wasn't long before I was head over heels. And his attachment to his mom? I admired it. He'd call her every day, made sure she had everything she needed. "She's my queen," he'd say, and I saw it as a sign of his loyalty and love. A guy who treated his mom like royalty was bound to treat his wife like a queen, right? Then came the proposal. It was nothing fancy, just us, in our favorite little park. The ring was perfect, simple and elegant, just like I always wanted. I said yes, without skipping a beat. But when we started talking about where we'd live, that's when things got a bit sticky. His mom, Maggie, sweet as she was in her own way, had her own ideas. She wanted us to move in with her. Jack broached the topic gently one evening, while we were cleaning up after dinner in my apartment. "Lucy, babe, Mom suggested we move in with her. Saves money, and she'd love the company," he said, drying a plate and not quite meeting my eyes. I put down the dish I was washing, water still running. "Jack, I love your mom, you know I do. But babe, we need our own space. Just us." He looked conflicted but nodded. "I get it, I really do. It's just, Mom's alone a lot, you know?" I turned off the water and leaned against the counter. "What if we find a place nearby? That way, we're close, but not too close. She can have us over anytime she wants, but we keep our privacy too. How does that sound?" Jack's face brightened. "Yeah, that could work. I'll talk to her about it." And so, we compromised. We found a rental not 10 minutes from Maggie's place. It seemed ideal. I figured over time, as we settled into married life, Jack's attachment might shift more towards our little unit. With that in mind, I rented out my apartment and started stashing away the extra income. The move was smoother than I expected. Jack was happy because his mom was just a stone's throw away, and I was relieved to maintain some independence. We fell into a comfortable routine, Jack and I commuting to work together most days, coming home to our little sanctuary. But as weeks turned into months, I couldn't shake the feeling that the ties that bound Jack to his mom weren't loosening. Every decision, big or small, seemed to need her stamp of approval. I found myself wondering if our compromise was truly that, or just a temporary fix to a permanent issue. Life was bustling as usual, my marketing job keeping me on my toes during the day, and the new marital home chores waiting each evening. Things took a sharp turn when Maggie fell sick. It wasn't anything life-threatening, thank goodness, but enough to knock the strength out of her. "Lucy, can you check on Mom after work? She's really not feeling well," Jack asked one morning as we were rushing out the door, his face lined with worry. Of course, I'll swing by and see what she needs, I replied, squeezing his hand. Little did I know, this would become my new routine. Each evening, I'd go straight from the office to Maggie's. She had a specific way she liked things done, especially when it came to her meals. I can't eat that reheated stuff, it messes with my stomach, she'd complain if I ever dared suggest cooking enough to last a couple of meals. So, I found myself cooking fresh meals daily, her preferred dishes that I slowly mastered. After Maggie recovered, I thought my after-work visits would taper off. I couldn't have been more wrong. She'd grown accustomed to the company and the care. If anything, her demands increased. Lucy, dear, could you help me with the laundry? And maybe we can order some groceries online, she'd say, her voice always carrying that expectant tone. I did all that and more, picking up her orders, driving her to shops, and every beauty appointment she made. Weekends were no exception. Jack and I spent most of our Saturdays and Sundays at Maggie's, trying to make up for all the family time she missed when Jack's brother cut her off. One particularly exhausting Sunday evening, after a day filled with errands and family gatherings all centered around Maggie's needs, I collapsed on our couch, feeling more like a caretaker than a wife. Jack, we need to talk, I started, my voice heavy with fatigue. I love your mom, but I need some space, some time for us. Jack sat beside me, his expression tense. Lucy, Mom's all alone. You know what happened with my brother. I can't just abandon her. She relies on us. I knew about his brother, how he and his wife had moved away, cutting off all contact with Maggie after their wedding. Torn between my need for independence and my husband's loyalty to his mother, I felt isolated. Yet, seeing Jack so earnest, so committed to not repeating his brother's path, I relented. Okay, Jack. We'll keep things as they are for now, I conceded, trying to mask my disappointment. Thank you, babe. I know it's a lot. We'll figure something out, I promise, he said, pulling me into a hug that felt both comforting and confining. As days turned into weeks, my after-work routine remained unchanged. Maggie's house became a second job, one that paid in tired smiles and a sense of duty. My own dreams and desires took a back seat, tucked away like the old novels I no longer had time to read. A year has passed since that conversation, but nothing much had changed. If anything, things got even more intense. Every day after work, my second shift began, cooking, cleaning, running errands for Maggie. By the time I got home each night, I was wiped out. One evening, sprawled on our couch with aching feet propped up, I broached a subject that had been on my mind for a while. Jack, don't you think it's time we think about having our own little family? I asked, trying to sound as casual as possible, despite the butterflies in my stomach. Jack's face lit up, a stark contrast to my tired expression. That's a fantastic idea, babe. Imagine a little one of ours running around. And hey, we could buy a bigger house, move in with Mom to help out. What do you think? The thought of living permanently under the same roof as Maggie sent a chill down my spine. I was thinking more along the lines of just us, you know? Just our little family. We can talk about that part later, let's just focus on the baby for now, Jack said quickly, probably sensing my hesitation. I agreed, knowing we needed a serious discussion about boundaries before anything was set in stone. Despite the unresolved living situation, we told Maggie about our plans to try for a baby. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. A baby, huh? That's wonderful. You two will make great parents. Her tone was flat, and I couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt, wondering if she felt like we were trying to replace her with a new family member. But I pushed those thoughts aside, focusing on the future. Months turned into a year, and despite all our hopes and efforts, nothing happened. I followed every health tip I could find, cut out alcohol, ate healthier, hit the gym more. Still, no baby. Worried, I booked an appointment with a specialist to see if something was wrong. Sitting in the sterile clinic, after countless tests, the doctor finally had some answers. It's unusual, Lucy, but your blood work shows elevated levels of a hormone found in birth control pills. Have you been taking any form of contraceptive? I stared at him, bewildered. No, absolutely not. We've been trying to conceive. Why would I take birth control? The doctor looked just as confused as I felt. It's definitely odd. If you're sure about not taking any contraceptives, this shouldn't be happening. Sometimes, prescriptions can get mixed up. I thanked him, my mind racing as I left the clinic. The drive home was a blur. How could this be happening? I'd been so careful with everything, checking and double-checking everything I consumed. Did someone tamper with my medication? The idea seemed ludicrous, but desperation and confusion clouded my thoughts. That evening, as per usual, I was at Maggie's house, cleaning up after dinner when I noticed something that made my heart stop. An empty package of birth control pills peeking out from underneath some other trash in the bin. The room spun a little as I pulled it out, examining it. This had to be a mistake. Maggie, can I ask where these came from? I said, holding up the blister pack for her to see. My voice was calm, but inside, I was anything but. Maggie glanced over, her face draining of color as she saw what was in my hand. Oh, those? I don't know, must be old, she stammered, looking anywhere but at me. That's funny, because it looks recent. And I just found out I'd been having birth control in my system. Been wondering why we couldn't get pregnant, I said, each word sharper than the last, watching her closely. The air felt heavy, thick with tension as Maggie shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Lucy, you have to understand, Understand what, Maggie? That you've been messing with my life? My marriage? The shock was giving way to a burning anger, my voice rising despite my attempt to control it. Maggie sighed, a long, weary sound. It's just, if you had a baby, then you'd stop coming around as much. Jack would stop. I can't lose him too, not like I lost his brother, she confessed, her voice cracking with emotion. So you decided to play God with my body? I was incredulous, feeling the sting of betrayal from someone I had trusted, someone I had cared for. I'm sorry, Lucy. I thought I was protecting my time with my son. That's all. Her apology sounded hollow, doing nothing to cool my anger. I didn't have it in me to argue further. I left her house, a storm of emotions brewing inside me. At home, I waited for Jack, rehearsing the conversation in my head. When he walked through the door, I didn't waste a moment. Your mom has been replacing my vitamins with birth control pills. That's why we couldn't get pregnant. I found the pack in her trash. I blurted it out, the words tasting bitter. Jack froze, his expression one of confusion that slowly morphed into disbelief. Mom? No, she wouldn't. She admitted it, Jack. She did it because she thought we'd stop visiting if we had a baby. After a moment of tense silence, he sighed, running his hands through his hair. Lucy, I know it sounds bad, but, you know Mom's been alone a long time. She was just scared. Can't you see that? Please don't be mad at her. Mad? Jack, she violated my body, our trust. How can you just stand there and defend her? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It felt like the world was upside down. I get it, it's messed up. But she's my mom, Lucy. We can get past this, right? Let's just forget it happened and move on, he said, almost pleading. Forget it happened? As if it were that simple. But I saw in his eyes that arguing would get me nowhere. From that day, I kept a vigilant watch over everything in our home. No more unsupervised visits to the medicine cabinet for Maggie. 2 months later, despite the odds, I found out I was pregnant. The joy was tempered by caution, given the recent betrayal. When we told Maggie, her reaction was as cold as ice. That's nice, she said flatly, then immediately asked about dinner plans as if nothing significant had been shared. Prepping for the birth of my baby became my new project, as intense as any marketing campaign I'd ever run. I signed up for prenatal classes, eager to learn everything I could about bringing my baby into the world as naturally as possible. Yet every class was a sharp reminder of my solo journey. Couples filled the room, hands entwined, while I sat alone, my chair next to me painfully empty. Jack made excuses for every session. "Babe, you know I've got so much on at work, and mom needs me tonight." Or, "I'm just not up for it, you know how these things make me feel." It was always something. Feeling more and more isolated, I threw myself into planning for the birth. I chose a clinic specializing in natural water births, located outside the city, known for its serene environment and expert care. It wasn't cheap, but I had been saving every penny from the rental income of my apartment. This was about bringing my baby safely and peacefully into the world, and I wasn't going to cut corners. One evening, while dining at Maggie's, the conversation inevitably turned to finances. "You know, Lucy, I heard those birthing centers cost a fortune. Why waste money when the hospital here does just fine?" Maggie said, her tone more accusing than curious. I took a deep breath, trying to keep the irritation from my voice. "It's not a waste if it ensures the health and safety of your grandchild, Maggie. I've got it covered." Jack, who had been half listening, suddenly tuned in. "Covered? How's that?" "Well, I've got a reserve account from the apartment rental. It's more than enough to cover the costs," I explained, a bit reluctantly. Maggie's eyes sharpened, her interest visibly piqued. "Oh, you've been saving up? That's good foresight." I nodded, feeling their gaze heavy on me, knowing I might have disclosed too much. Quickly, I steered the conversation elsewhere, discussing potential baby names to divert their focus. Despite the ongoing stress, I continued my solo visits to the prenatal classes, each time returning a little more empowered but also a little lonelier. The clinic staff was supportive, and I often stayed back to ask questions about the birth process. Each visit made me more certain of my decision: this was the right place for my baby to come into the world. With the countdown to motherhood ticking ever louder, I decided a short trip to visit my parents in their city was just what I needed. It had been too long since I had surrounded myself with family who were nothing but supportive and loving, a stark contrast to the tense atmosphere back home. My heart felt lighter as I caught up with old school friends and spent precious moments with my grandmother, promising her that my son would bear the name of my late grandfather. But barely a day into my visit, my phone buzzed with a call from Jack, his voice edged with urgency. "Lucy, you need to come back. Now." Panic surged through me. "What's happened? Is everything okay?" "Just come back, okay? It's important," he pressed, hanging up before I could probe further. Worried and confused, I packed up and headed back, my mind racing with possibilities of what could demand such an abrupt end to my visit. As I opened the front door of our home, the sight that greeted me sucked the air right out of my lungs. The house was a disaster zone: empty bottles, pizza boxes strewn across the floor, sticky stains marking the tiles. It looked like the aftermath of a wild party. Jack, smelling of booze and barely standing straight, waved a hand dismissively at the mess. I threw a bash to celebrate the baby coming. "Clean this up, will ya? I can't stand the mess." I stared at him, disbelief and anger swirling inside me. "You called me back for this? To clean up your party? Why couldn't you handle it?" He shrugged, a sloppy grin on his face. "Come on, Lucy. Don't be like that. It was a party for our kid." "A party that I wasn't even here for," I snapped back, my energy draining just thinking about the cleanup ahead. With a heavy heart, I started cleaning. Jack had already stumbled to our room, leaving me to deal with the chaos alone. The physical strain of bending, lifting, and scrubbing was immense, especially being so far along in my pregnancy. By the time I finished, my body ached, and I felt contractions starting, a sharp reminder that the baby was almost here. The next morning, labor kicked in full force. Alone and scared, I called a taxi to take me to the clinic. Jack, barely awake and nursing a hangover, mumbled something about meeting me there later. At the clinic, surrounded by medical staff, but devoid of the emotional support I so desperately needed, I gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. The pain of labor paled in comparison to the ache in my heart from doing it without Jack by my side. He showed up hours later, his congratulations feeling hollow and forced. "I'm here now, huh? Let's just focus on the little guy," he said, avoiding my eyes. The coldness in his voice stung, but nothing hurt more than Maggie's reaction, or lack thereof. When I called her with the news, her response was curt. "A baby shouldn't be shown off until he's at least a month old. Keeps away the bad vibes." Her words, so devoid of warmth, didn't surprise me as much as they should have. In a way, I was relieved. No visits from her meant one less thing to worry about. After what felt like an eternity, I finally brought my baby boy home from the clinic. The quiet of the house was a stark contrast to the chaotic events of the past few weeks. Despite the calm, an undercurrent of tension lingered, especially with Jack's nonchalant revelation that his mother had taken off on a vacation. A few days into adjusting to motherhood, I received the clinic bill. My heart sank when I saw the balance due, $5,000 more than what the insurance covered. Confident about my financial backup, I logged into my account to transfer the funds, only to find the balance shockingly low. Way below what should have been over $50,000. Panic set in, my breaths quick and shallow. Dialing Jack with trembling hands, I braced for his explanation. "Jack, there's hardly any money left in the reserve account." "What happened?" His reply was casual, dismissive almost. "Oh, yeah, Mom needed some cash for her vacation. You know, to unwind and all." "Jack, are you telling me you gave our savings, over $40,000, to your mother?" "It's our son's future, Jack." "How could you?" My voice rose, a mix of disbelief and rising anger. "Babe, come on. You're blowing this out of proportion. And anyway, you stopped cleaning up at Mom's place, she's tired." "She deserves some fun," he retorted. That was the final straw. His words echoed in my ears, each one chipping away at the last vestiges of patience I had for this marriage. By evening, I was sitting in front of a lawyer, divorce papers spread out in front of me. When Jack saw the papers, his reaction was not what I expected. No anger, no sadness, just a resigned, almost relieved, "All right then." He signed them with a steady hand, grabbed his coat, and left without another word, heading straight to his mother's place. Feeling a mix of liberation and deep sorrow, I decided it was time for me and my son to leave, at least for a while. We went to my parents' house, where I was greeted with warm hugs and soothing words, a stark contrast to the coldness of my now strained marriage. "Lucy, you need to talk to Jack's brother," my dad suggested one evening. "He went through something similar with Maggie." Hesitant but curious, I reached out to Jack's estranged brother. The conversation that unfolded was eye-opening. He told me about how Maggie had tried to control his wife's inheritance, how it tore their marriage apart until he chose his wife over his mother. Maggie had cut all ties with him in retaliation. "Lucy, she won't change. I learned that the hard way. You've got to look out for yourself and your kid," he advised, his voice heavy with the weight of experience. Hanging up, I felt a mix of emotions swirling inside me. Jack had chosen his mother over our family, just as his brother warned might happen. The realization was painful but clear. The final straw had been pulled, the last line crossed. I stood in the police station, a mix of resolve and nervous energy swirling through me as I detailed everything to the officer on duty. My voice was steady, though my hands trembled slightly. My husband transferred money from my account without my knowledge, and I believe he forged my signature to do it. Over the following weeks, a full investigation unfolded. It revealed not only had Jack forged my signature, but he had also given his mother access to the funds. The evidence was undeniable, and eventually, both were charged. In court, Jack's face was unreadable as the judge handed down their sentences. Both received suspended sentences for their crimes. Jack was also ordered to pay alimony for our son, ensuring at least some financial stability for our future. I reached out to the family of Jack's brother, driven by the conversation I had with him. They welcomed me with open arms. It turned out they were nothing like the monsters Maggie had painted them to be. Their warmth and acceptance were a soothing balm to the wounds left by my former in-laws. One sunny Saturday afternoon, as our children played together in the backyard, Jack's brother, Mike, threw a couple of steaks on the grill, and his wife, Sarah, handed me a chilled glass of lemonade. "Lucy, we're just glad you reached out. Mom, she can spin quite the tale," Mike said, flipping the steaks with a practiced flick of his wrist. Watching Danny laugh as he chased after his cousins, a sense of peace settled over me. "Thank you, both. It means the world to us to have family like you." As the kids tumbled around, their laughter filling the air, Mike leaned over and said in a conspiratorial tone, "You know, Mom always did like to be the center of the universe. But around here, it's just simple family life. No drama." "Exactly what we need," I responded, smiling at the simple truth in his words. Our gatherings became a regular thing, our children bonding as cousins do, forming connections that promised to last a lifetime. The holidays were particularly full of joy, the kids' excitement contagious, making each moment a bit brighter. I'm Jess, a 26-year-old nurse who's seen enough to know life ain't always a smooth ride. The day that rock band rolled into town was a break from the usual chaos. Their music was my escape, something my soul craved more than my next breath. That night, I decided to let loose, heading to their concert alone, not knowing it'd change my life. The arena was packed, the air electric with anticipation. I wove through the crowd, finding a spot that felt like it was made just for me. That's when I bumped into him, literally. A tall guy with a mischievous smile, wearing a band tee that looked like it had seen better days. "Hey, watch it!" I snapped, more out of surprise than annoyance. "Sorry, didn't see you there," he replied, his grin widening. "You here alone?" "Yeah, and by the looks of it, so are you." I shot back, my defenses up. He laughed, a sound that seemed to cut through the pre-concert buzz. "Name's Tom. And yeah, I wouldn't miss this for the world. These guys are like the soundtrack to my life." "Jess," I said, offering a hand grudgingly. His grip was firm, reassuring somehow. "Same here. Grew up with their music." We chatted as if we'd known each other for years, not minutes. Tom had a way of making me laugh, really laugh, something I hadn't done in a while. When the concert started, we were lost in the music, together yet alone in our little bubble. After the encore, neither of us wanted the night to end. "Know a decent cafe around here?" Tom asked, his eyes searching mine. "Might do. Follow me," I said, leading the way. The cafe was quiet, a stark contrast to the concert's frenzy. We found a secluded corner, our conversation flowing as easily as the coffee. "So, nurse, huh? Bet you've got stories," Tom said, his voice a mix of curiosity and respect. "More than I can count. And what about you? What's your deal?" I asked, leaning in. "I work in IT. Not as exciting as saving lives, but it pays the bills." He shrugged, a hint of humility in his eyes. We talked about everything and nothing, from our craziest dreams to our mundane daily gripes. It felt natural, easy. Before we knew it, hours had passed. "Should probably get going," Tom said reluctantly. "But I don't want this to be the last time we talk." "Me neither," I admitted, feeling a connection I couldn't quite explain. We exchanged phones, typing in our numbers with the promise of a call. As we said goodbye, I felt something shift inside me. Maybe it was the music, the night, or just Tom himself, but I walked away feeling lighter, my heart pounding in my chest. After a few months of dating Tom, the day came to meet his family, or more accurately, his mom. He'd been upfront about living with her, saying she was all he had in terms of family. I respected that. My own family was just my grandma, after all. Tom's place was modest, a cozy little house with a garden that looked like it needed a bit of love. "Mom's inside," he said, a hint of nervousness in his voice as we approached the door. It struck me then how important this was to him, and suddenly, I was the one feeling jittery. The door swung open to reveal a woman in her late 50s, her hair a tangle of curls, eyes sharp as they landed on me. "So, you're Jess," she said, her voice carrying a note that I couldn't quite place. Was it curiosity? Suspicion? Nice to meet you, Mrs. Johnson, I offered, extending a hand that she took after a brief hesitation. Call me Linda, she said, leading us into the living room. The place was neat, filled with photos of Tom at various ages. It was clear he was the center of her world. We sat, and Linda wasted no time diving in. Tom tells me you're a nurse. That's a hard job. You plan on doing that long? I nodded, sensing where this was heading. I love my job, but I'm also planning to study further, maybe become a doctor someday. Linda's eyes narrowed a bit. A doctor, huh? That's a lot of school. Expensive, too. Tom jumped in, trying to smooth the waters. Mom, Jess is really passionate about her work. It's one of the things I admire about her. Linda turned her gaze to Tom, and then back to me, her expression softening slightly. Tommy here has always been my rock. After his dad left, it was just the two of us. I've given everything to him, you know. I caught Tom's eye, a silent communication passing between us. I knew this was hard for him, torn between the two most important women in his life. Linda continued. I rely on Tom for a lot. He's been so good to me, giving me half his salary every month. It's only fair, after all I've sacrificed. The air in the room felt heavier, the tension palpable. I didn't know what to say. It was clear Linda expected this arrangement to continue, even with me in the picture. And what about your family, Jess? Linda's question snapped me back to the moment. I was raised by my grandmother, I said, my voice steady. My parents died when I was young. Grandma's all I have. Linda nodded, a strange satisfaction in her eyes. Well, if you and Tom are serious, I'd expect you to contribute as well. $800 a month should cover it. I choked on the tea I'd been sipping. $800? Tom's hand found mine under the table, squeezing it gently. We'll work something out, Mom. Jess and I are a team now. When Tom and I decided to tie the knot, we knew it wouldn't be a lavish affair, but nothing prepared me for the battle over our wedding plans. Linda had her own ideas about saving money, which basically meant cutting down our guest list to a handful and scrapping any unnecessary celebrations. I wanted simple, sure, but I also wanted some joy, some celebration of us. One evening, as we sat down with Linda to discuss the wedding plans, the tension was thicker than the coffee Tom had brewed. So, I was thinking, Linda began, in that way that told you she wasn't just thinking, she was deciding. Why waste money on a big venue when we have a perfectly good backyard? Tom squeezed my hand under the table, a silent plea for patience. Mom, Jess, and I were hoping for a bit more, celebration. Not just a backyard thing. Linda's eyes narrowed, her lips pursing in that familiar line of disapproval. And who's going to pay for this celebration? You too? With what money? I took a deep breath, readying myself. We've been saving, Linda. And it's not like we want something extravagant. Just something a bit more special than the backyard. Linda scoffed. Special? You think spending money you don't have on one day is special? You know what's special? Security. Not starting your married life in debt. I could feel my patience wearing thin, but I held my ground. We understand the value of money, Linda. We're not talking about going into debt. Just a modest celebration at a small venue. We've done the math. Despite Linda's protests, we managed to reach a compromise of sorts, a small venue, close family and friends, and a strict budget. Linda insisted on overseeing the catering, claiming she could cut costs, which meant we ended up with a buffet that was more potluck than professional. On the day of our wedding, the venue looked, well, modest. My grandma, the one person from my family there, whispered to me as I readied myself, "This Linda, she's a piece of work, isn't she? Just remember, dear, you're marrying Tom, not his mother." The ceremony was short and sweet. Tom looked handsome, and when I walked down the aisle towards him, the look in his eyes told me we'd made the right choice. It was our moment, and even Linda couldn't tarnish that. At the reception, as guests mingled and the homemade buffet was served, Linda took it upon herself to remind everyone how much money we'd saved. "Just think what they can now put towards their future," she announced to a group of our friends, who nodded politely, their expressions a mix of amusement and sympathy. Tom's best man, Mike, a childhood friend who knew the family dynamics all too well, leaned over to us with a grin. "Hey, at least she didn't charge entry, right?" I laughed, the tension of the past weeks melting away in the warmth of the moment. Tom wrapped an arm around my waist, pulling me close. "We did it, Jess. Despite everything, we did it." "Yeah," I agreed, leaning my head against his shoulder. "And now, we start our lives together, just us." "And Linda," Tom added with a wry smile, earning him a playful jab in the ribs from me. Settling into married life with Tom was like navigating a boat on choppy waters. Our tiny rented apartment became our haven, a place where we planned to build our future together. But the shadow of financial strain loomed large over us, darkening even our brightest moments. One chilly evening, as we sat huddled over our budget spreadsheet, the reality of our situation hit me hard. "Look at this, Tom," I said, pointing at the screen. "After rent, bills, and your mom's $800, there's barely anything left for us." Tom rubbed his eyes, weary from the long day. "I know, Jess. But what can we do? Mom depends on that money." I sighed, frustration bubbling inside me. "But does she really need that much? We're barely scraping by as it is. And we've been putting off so many things, like fixing the car, and even thinking about a down payment for a house." Tom's expression hardened, a defensive edge creeping into his voice. "Jess, we've been over this. My mom raised me by herself. It's my duty to take care of her now." The argument ended with us in a tense silence, each stewing in our own stubbornness. But it didn't end there. Linda, ever the persistent one, took to calling me regularly, each conversation a thinly veiled reminder not to forget the $800 monthly tribute to her bank account. And when calls didn't cut it, she'd appear at our doorstep, lamenting her hard life and hinting heavily that a little more financial support wouldn't go amiss. I did my best to ignore the hints, to smile and nod and change the subject. But it grated on me, the constant pressure, the relentless reminders of a debt Tom felt we owed. Finally, one evening, after another of Linda's visits, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Tom, we need to talk about your mom," I started, the day's frustrations bubbling to the surface. "I'm tired, Tom. Tired of the hints, the constant pressure for more money. We're saving for a down payment, for our future. Can't she see that?" Tom's face went from puzzled to dark in seconds. "My mom is always right, Jess," he said, his voice icy. "You have no right to talk about her like that. She sacrificed everything for me." His words hit like a slap. "So what, our plans, our future, doesn't count for anything?" I shot back, anger rising. That was it. Tom shut down, walls up, and suddenly we were two strangers living in the same space. He wouldn't talk to me, not really. Our conversations dwindled to nothing, replaced by messages left on stickers on the fridge. "Need milk. Working late." The bare minimum of communication. One rare evening, when the silence felt a bit less oppressive, I decided to broach the subject, the words tumbling out of me before I could think better of it. "Tom, do you ever think about, us having kids?" Tom, who'd been half focused on some bills, looked up, his expression unreadable. "Kids? Jess, you know how Mom feels about that. She's already stretched thin with just us helping out." "Yeah, but it's not about her, is it? It's about us, what we want," I said, a hint of desperation creeping into my voice. Tom sighed, setting the bills aside. I know, but think about it. The money, the time. How are we supposed to manage all that? Plus, Mom, she's outright against it. Says it's too much expense, too much hassle." I felt a flash of anger, frustration. "So, what? Her word is law now? What about what we want, Tom?" What about our life together? The room went quiet again, the air thick with words we couldn't seem to say. Tom finally broke the silence. I just don't think now's the right time, Jess. Maybe later, when things are better. The next day, Linda's unannounced visit threw gasoline on the already smoldering embers. I heard you two talking about kids, she started, her tone accusatory as if the mere thought was an affront to her. Yeah, so? I said, my patience worn thin. Linda's eyes narrowed. So, you think you can just bring kids into this mess? You can barely take care of yourselves. Where do you think the money for that will come from? Out of what you should be giving me. Her words stung, not because they were true, but because of the blatant disregard for our autonomy, our desires as a couple. It's our life, Linda. Our decision. I shot back, my voice firm. Your decision? No, my son's decision. And he knows better than to make a foolish mistake like that, Linda countered, her voice rising. The argument spiraled from there, voices raising, words that couldn't be taken back flying between us. It ended with me saying something I'd never thought I'd have to. Maybe we shouldn't see each other for a while. This is too much. Linda left in a huff, and Tom, when he found out, sided with her. Our home felt more like a battleground, each of us entrenched in our positions, the idea of starting a family now a no man's land between us. It started with a phone notification that blinked innocently enough, but held a punch that knocked the wind out of me. Tom had transferred $1,000 to his mom this month, not the usual $800. My mind raced, confusion and anger swirling together. When I confronted him, his response was as cold as the look in his eyes. It's my decision, Jess. It's for my mom, he said, his voice flat, leaving no room for discussion. But we agreed on a budget, Tom. We have our own needs, our own plans. How could you just change that without even talking to me? I shot back, my voice rising with every word. Tom shrugged, a dismissive gesture that stung more than I expected. Things change. I don't have to consult you on everything. That was the moment I felt it, the crack in what I thought was solid, the betrayal of our partnership. But the worst was yet to come. Days later, a friend from work, Carrie, called me, her voice hesitant. Jess, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but I think you should know. She trailed off, the pause heavy with dread. What is it, Carrie? I urged, a sinking feeling in my stomach. I saw Tom's profile on a dating site. He even messaged me, not realizing who I was at first. I'm so sorry, she finished, her voice a mix of sympathy and discomfort. My world stopped. The air left my lungs in a rush, and I felt dizzy. Are you sure? I managed to whisper, clinging to a thread of hope that it was all a mistake. Yes, I'm sure. I can send you the screenshots if you want, Carrie offered, and true to her word, she did. The evidence was undeniable. There was Tom's picture, his profile, and the messages he'd sent, flirting, suggesting they meet up. The betrayal cut deep, a wound I wasn't sure could ever heal. When Tom came home that night, I was waiting, the screenshots glowing accusingly on my tablet. His reaction was one of shock, then anger, not at being caught but at being confronted. What, you're spying on me now? Invading my privacy? He exploded, the audacity of his anger almost laughable. Spare me, Tom. How long? How long have you been doing this? I demanded, my voice shaking with emotion. Tom's anger fizzled out, replaced by a resignation that was somehow worse. I don't know, Jess. A while, I guess. I needed something else. Something more. More than me. More than us, I said, the reality settling in like a stone in my stomach. Yeah, I guess so, he admitted, and with those words, the last of my hope evaporated. I want a divorce, I said, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. Tom looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I married. But it was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by a cold indifference. Fine, he said simply. If that's what you want. The divorce proceedings were quick, devoid of the messy entanglements that come with shared assets or children. I moved back to my grandmother's house, the only place that still felt like home, carrying with me the pain of betrayal, but also a sense of relief. 3 months post-divorce, and life had started to settle into a new kind of normal, or as normal as it could get without Tom and his mom, Linda, in the picture. That is until my world got rocked again, but this time by loss. My grandmother passed away, leaving behind a void no one could fill. Along with the heartache came a surprise. She left me her house and a hefty sum of $800,000. Just when I thought things couldn't get any more surreal, Linda showed up at my doorstep, bursting with a kind of frantic excitement that felt out of place given the recent funeral. "Jess, darling. I heard about your inheritance. What a blessing." Linda gushed, not wasting a second on pleasantries. I stared at her, incredulous. "Linda, what are you doing here?" She brushed past me into the house, as if we were still family. "Now that you've come into this money, you can surely afford to help me out a bit more. Not just the usual $1,000, but maybe double that? And, oh, a small gift wouldn't hurt. Something nice, expensive." Her words were like a slap in the face, each one more absurd than the last. But it was her next statement that really threw me. "And since you're so well off now, I suppose it's okay for you to have a baby with Tom. I mean, with this kind of money, why not?" I couldn't help it, laughter bubbled up from within me, loud and uncontrollable. Linda looked at me as if I'd lost my mind. "Linda, you do know Tom and I are divorced, right? 3 months ago. Your son and I are done. Over." The look on her face was priceless, a mix of shock, disbelief, and something that looked suspiciously like panic. "Divorced? But Tom never said." Why would he hide that? Maybe because he didn't want to crawl back to Mommy's house? Or maybe he thought you'd cut him off financially? I shrugged, the absurdity of the situation not lost on me. Linda fumbled for her phone, dialing Tom in a frenzy. The conversation was short and heated, her voice rising with every word until she finally hung up, her face pale. He said it's true. Said he didn't tell me because he wanted to maintain independence. Independence. Now he tells me this, when we could have been rich. "Linda, it's time for you to go," I said, my patience wearing thin. She stood, defeated, but then, with a last-ditch effort, she turned to me. "Jess, can't you reconsider? For the sake of the family? Tom made a mistake, but surely..." I cut her off with another round of laughter. "Linda, there is no family, not between me and Tom. And after everything, you really think I'd go back to him? Please, leave." One morning, as I sat in the kitchen with a cup of coffee, the sun casting gentle patterns on the table, there was a knock at the door. Hesitant, I approached, half expecting Linda or, worse, Tom, to be on the other side. Instead, I found an old friend from nursing school, Maya, her face bright with a smile that was both comforting and contagious. "I heard about your grandma, Jess. I'm so sorry. And then I heard about, well, everything else," Maya said, stepping inside as I waved her in. We sat down, and over coffee, we caught up on life, on the turns mine had taken, and on her adventures since we last spoke. It was Maya who, after hearing my story, looked me dead in the eye and said, "Jess, it's time. Time to move on, for real. You've got this chance, this freedom. What's stopping you from taking the leap?" Her words struck a chord. "I've been thinking," I started, my mind racing with possibilities. "Maybe it's time to go back to school, like I always wanted. Get that degree, move into a field I'm passionate about." "Yes." Maya clapped her hands, her excitement palpable. "That's the spirit. Look, life's thrown you some curveballs, but you're still standing. And now you've got this incredible opportunity to do something just for you." The conversation with Maya lit a fire under me. It was the push I needed to finally make a decision, to move forward with purpose. I started researching programs that night, my heart set on advancing my career in a way I'd only ever dreamed of. but life has a funny way of testing you. Just as I was settling into this new chapter, Tom appeared on my doorstep one evening, looking every bit the man I once thought I knew. "Jess, can we talk?" he asked, a nervous edge to his voice I wasn't used to. I hesitated, a part of me curious, another part wary. "All right, Tom. Talk." He shuffled uncomfortably, looking around as if searching for the right words in the air around him. I heard about your inheritance. And about what you're doing with it. Going back to school, that's great, Jess." I raised an eyebrow, crossing my arms. "Thanks, Tom. Was there something else?" He sighed, a deep, weary sound. "I guess I just wanted to see if there was a chance for us." "I've been doing some thinking, Anne." "No, Tom," I cut him off, my voice firm but not unkind. "There's no chance for us. Not anymore. I've moved on, really moved on. And you should too." As he turned to leave, I felt a weight lift, a final closure on a chapter that had dragged on too long. In the days that followed, I found myself more focused, more determined. I was building a life on my own terms, free from the expectations and disappointments of the past. My studies gave me a sense of direction, and my grandmother's inheritance allowed me the freedom to pursue my dreams without restraint. Hi, my name is Emily Roberts, and I'm just your average 28-year-old woman from Chicago. Ever since I was a little kid, I've been obsessed with baking and cooking up delicious treats in the kitchen. It was like therapy for me, measuring, mixing, getting my hands dirty. Watching something go from a bunch of basic ingredients to a mouth-watering pastry or cake was pure magic. After high school, the obvious choice was attending culinary school to become a professional pastry chef. My parents didn't have much money, so I worked my butt off at a diner throughout those years, but it was worth it when I landed my dream job at Delilah's Bakery right after graduating. I started out at minimum wage, working insane hours, but I busted my ass and became one of Delilah's star bakers in just a couple years. It was during one of my bakery shifts that I met Tom Anderson, an account executive for a software company. He came in one morning looking tired as hell. "Mornin' darlin', the usual?" I chirped over the counter. Tom just grunted and slid a $20 across. "Surprise me with something good, sweetheart. Sales been kicking my ass this week." Since Tom looked like he needed a pick-me-up, I hooked him up with an extra-large banana bread loaf, my specialty. On the house, hon, everyone needs a little treat now and then. The guy looked stunned. "Wow, thank you. You're an angel." He tore off a chunk and his eyes rolled back. "Oh my God, this is insane. You made this?" I blushed. Guilty as charged. Just a little banana bread to brighten your day. Well, consider my day bright, beautiful. I'm Tom Anderson. That's how we met, me slinging pastries and him being a regular customer who always left me the nicest compliments. We got to know each other more over the following weeks, flirted shamelessly, and he eventually worked up the nerve to ask me out on a real date. The rest was history. We dated for 2 years before Tom finally proposed. I was over the moon. This guy deeply appreciated my culinary talents and had fallen for the real me. Well, perfect except for one thing. Tom's mother Jane was a nightmare from the first time I met her. She looked me up and down like I was a cockroach when Tom brought me over for Sunday dinner. "Ma, this is my girlfriend Emily." "Emily, this is my mom Jane," Tom said, putting his arm around me. Jane's thin lips pursed as she gave me an obvious once-over. "A pastry chef? That's interesting." She said it like she was trying not to gag. "Yes ma'am, I work at Delilah's Bakery downtown." "Tom says you've tried my banana bread before?" I tried to be friendly with an outstretched hand. Jane just stared at my hand like it was diseased, before turning up her nose. I didn't realize that was made by the pastry girl at the counter. I just assumed Delilah made everything herself. That was it, the claws came out from this evil old harpy on our very first meeting. I wanted to slap her and storm out, but Tom kept me calm, whispering that his mom was just little rough and to give her a chance. After getting married, I decided it was time to take my passion for baking to the next level. So I quit and got licensed to operate a home bakery business. Oh, how adorable, you're playing kid chef again. Jane cackled. I give it 6 months before the oven mitt comes off and reality sets in, sweet cheeks. Tom cut in, putting his hand on my arm. Lay off her, Ma. Emily's worked her tail off to get here, she's got a real entrepreneurial spirit. Oh, I'm terrified. Jane threw her hands up mockingly. The great queen of cupcakes is finally branching out from behind that bakery counter cash register. What an inspirational, gutsy career move. My face burned, but I kept my cool. Thank you for that stunning vote of confidence. I appreciate your support as I follow my dreams. But you know what? Spite can be an incredible motivator. So as the months rolled on, I baked and baked my little heart out, taking custom orders through word of mouth and social media. Jane constantly ragged on me about playing make-believe as a baker. But orders and 5-star reviews from clients started rolling in like crazy. I had a true knack for crafting gorgeous custom cakes, cookies, pastries, you name it. Have you seen the latest for Emily's Eats? Tom gushed one night over dinner, scrolling through my Instagram feed. This girl is incredible. Her croissant cereal treats are blowing up. Jane shot me a withering look over her glass of wine. Well, isn't that wonderful, dear? Getting those internet likes must be very validating. Although I'm not quite sure how viable a business based on baked goods photo shoots can really be. Things only got more tense as my home bakery grew. Jane seemingly took personal offense to my hustle and grind as Emily's Eats blew up. Somebody ordered a 2-tier salted caramel cake for a wedding in Lincoln Park this weekend. I excitedly showed Tom the order one evening. This could be my big break to get into the Chicago event space. Jane snorted from the couch. Oh, how wonderful, sweetie. A locally catered cake for a couple of yuppies' nuptials. You'll really make it big with jobs like that. Better yuppie nuptials than nitpicking and nagging all day, like some miserable gossips I know. I fired back, losing my cool. Jane looked ready to swing before Tom stepped in. All right, that's enough from both of you. Mom, stop crapping on Emily's dream before it even gets off the ground. And you. He shot me a look. Don't let her jabs get you riled up. This is your passion we're talking about. He was right. Every time I got flustered arguing with that wretched woman, I got sloppier in the kitchen. And I couldn't afford any mistakes, not when I was pouring every ounce of energy into making Emily's Eats a success. One day, I got a huge order from one of my regular customers, Mrs. Wilkins. She wanted a big fancy cake and like 50 assorted pastries for some corporate shindig at her husband's office. This was a massive deal for my little home bakery business. Listen up, Emily, Mrs. Wilkins said in that no-nonsense tone of hers. This order needs to be absolutely perfect, you hear? We're talking the biggest wigs at my Richards company. If this goes well, you can bet your sweet behind I'll be referring you to all my high society friends. For the next few days, I worked myself to the bone prepping for Mrs. Wilkins' huge order. I wanted to craft a showstopper cake with elegant piped rosettes and handmade gum paste flowers. And the pastries had to be delicious little works of art. The morning I was supposed to deliver everything, I was a bundle of nerves. But I had baked and decorated each item with care, checking them over 1,000,000 times for any imperfections. By 10 a.m., I had it all packaged up and looking like a dream. That's when Jane barged in, ruining my flow. There you are, lazybones. I need you to run to the post office right this minute. She shoved a shipping label in my face. I ordered something special online and it requires a signature. I groaned in frustration. Are you serious? I'm literally about to head out with this massive order I've been working on for days. The only words I should be hearing from you are why yes, Mother Jane, I'll be happy to run your errand right away. Jane waggled her bony finger at me. Against my better judgment, I agreed to Jane's stupid demand just to get her out of my face. She gave me a sickly sweet smile as I grabbed my purse. Wonderful, that's a good girl. Now hurry along and I'll make sure your little baked nothings get delivered safely while you're out. Something about her tone raised red flags, but I was too frazzled to think much of it. I figured Jane was just being her usual awful self, condescending my business as always. When I got home, Jane said with a grin she had given the cakes and pastries to the courier. 2 days later, I got a call from the furious client, Mr. Wilkins himself. "What in the goddamn hell were those inedible monstrosities you tried to pass off as pastries, Emily?" He shouted so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "Sir, I don't understand. This has to be some mistake." I was openly weeping at this point, all my hard work and biggest chance at success crumbling around me. I followed all the instructions to a T, perfectly tempering the chocolate, using fresh ingredients. "Please let me make this right." "You're damn right you'll be making this right by refunding me every cent and removing any association with my company from your cheap little website and socials." With that, he hung up, leaving me a sobbing, hysterical mess on the kitchen floor. Over the next few months, my budding home bakery business completely withered and died thanks to the horrific reviews from the Wilkins disaster. Jane, meanwhile, watched the fallout with glee. "Well, isn't this just a shame?" she crooned one evening as I sat despondently scrolling through the scathing online comments about my former business. Although I can't say I'm terribly surprised. I warned you not to get your hopes up too high with this cute little baking fantasy. Baking had always been my biggest passion, and having it ruthlessly mocked by Jane made the failure that much more devastating. For a while, I just stopped getting in the kitchen altogether. "Come on, babe, you can't let that witch get you down like this," Tom pleaded one night as I laid on the couch, staring off blankly. "Baking is your calling, don't let my mom's nasty comments make you give up on your dream." His pep talk actually gave me an idea. Maybe I could start doing baking tutorials and tips videos online to remind people how skilled I was. I spent the next few months throwing myself into cultivating an audience on Instagram, YouTube, you name it. I filmed step-by-step guides to my favorite recipes, shared baking hacks I'd learned over the years, and did calming videos just doing things like piping frosting decorations. To my surprise, people actually started tuning in and engaging with my content in a big way. Eventually, my follower counts on the various platforms started growing exponentially. "Damn it, Emily," Tom beamed one night, looking at my YouTube stats. "You just hit 100,000 subscribers. That's insane." Just then, Jane came shuffling into the room, wrinkling her nose at Tom and I smiling over my laptop. "What's got you two grinning like idiots?" Jane snapped. "Don't tell me your baked goods cart finally made it onto the evening news." I rolled my eyes. "If you must know, my baking tutorial videos online are getting wildly popular. I just hit over 100,000 subscribers." Jane's face instantly soured into a frown. "Is that so? How delightful." The sarcasm dripped from her voice. "Wasting all your time baking again for strangers on the internet to gawk at, I see." "It's not just wasting time, Jane," I said, trying to keep my tone even. "I've built a real following of people who appreciate my skills and knowledge. This whole thing could lead to amazing opportunities down the road." "Oh, like what?" Jane scoffed. "Getting your own public access television show? Maybe a baking blog no one reads? Shall I start setting aside money for your future unemployment now or later?" I fought the urge to cry as Jane laughed coldly, clearly threatened by my small restart towards pursuing my passion again. No matter how much I accomplished, she always found words that hit me hard. One day, I bumped into an old friend, Jenna, who I went to culinary school with years ago. She looked just as bright and bubbly as always. "Well, I'll be darned if it isn't Emily Roberts," Jenna gushed, pulling me into a big hug. "Girl, it's been ages. How the heck are you?" "Jenna, hey. Wow, yeah, it really has been too long," I said, returning her warm embrace. "I'm doing okay, you know, keeping busy with my at-home baking business and all." Jenna's eyes went wide with recognition. "No way, you're Emily's Eats? The baking blog with all those gorgeous dessert tutorials that's blown up lately?" I gave an embarrassed shrug. Yeah, that's me. I do love baking up a storm for my little online audience. Speaking of which, Jenna adopted a more pensive look. Emily, you've got to come be a guest on my cooking show. We've got a slot open for a baking demo in next week's episode. I tried to mask my giddiness, shuffling my feet coyly. Well gosh, if you really think making a cameo could help grow my brand, then I'd be honored. We exchanged contacts so Jenna's crew could send over the show deets. As I headed home, my head was still spinning at this shocking stroke of good luck. Me, baking live on TV? Could this opportunity get any more perfect to rehab my reputation after the Wilkins fiasco? When I filled Tom in over dinner, he matched my level of excitement. Damn it, that's insane. My girl, baking it up on live TV, talk about the ultimate comeback. I swatted him playfully. Oh stop, I'm sure it won't be that big a deal. Just a little guest spot to get some extra exposure, nothing crazy. But of course, Jane had to come sweeping in with her signature negativity to burst my bubble. What's all this nonsense I hear about you being on the television, baking like a circus monkey for housewives to gawk at? I rolled my eyes. Jane, must you always diminish everything positive in my life? This is a huge opportunity for great exposure for my home baking business. Jane simply tittered mockingly before turning businesslike. Yes, that's all well and good. Now about getting me and Tom audience tickets. My eyes boggled. I'm sorry, what? You want tickets to come watch the taping? Well, of course, Jane said in a tone like she was explaining something to a small child. I've been dying for a chance to appear on television myself for ages, even if just as an extra in the crowd. After some browbeating, I eventually gave in to Jane's insufferable demands and called up Jenna to ask for a couple of audience passes, figuring it would be easier than dealing with the old hag's tantrum over being denied. Thanks so much for this. My whole crew is stoked to have you, Jenna gushed when I arrived at the studio the day of taping. She ushered me over to the kitchen set area where high-definition cameras were set up around the blazing hot lights of the instructional cooking station. When we go live in 3 hours, you'll be baking up your famous salted caramel apple pie and a platter of those drool-worthy lemon cupcakes you always post. While I got glammed up for my big television debut, Jane and Tom got seated in the front row of the studio audience per Jane's insistent demands. Part of me was relieved to have their familiar faces there to lean on. The other part knew Jane would find some way to undermine or sabotage me yet again out of her usual jealousy and resentment. After that, I headed into the kitchen area to do some practice runs for my baking demo. I wanted to get the motions and plating down perfectly before going live. The pies and cupcakes I prepped looked downright mouth-watering, hopefully a good sign. After one last check of each dish, the director announced a brief break before going live. I took the opportunity to use the restroom and gather my nerves before the big moment. But when I got back to the kitchen set, Jenna was waiting with a concerned look on her face. Hey, sorry to bug you before we go live, but you'll never believe this. Our stage manager noticed your mother-in-law snooping around your workspace a few minutes ago. A wave of dread and panic washed over me as I rushed to examine the workspace. Jenna was right, some of my prepped ingredients had clearly been moved around. I couldn't believe Jane would stoop this low, sabotaging my big television debut by deliberately replacing my ingredients. Hot, angry tears sprang to my eyes as Jenna pulled me into a comforting hug. Hey, it's okay, we'll just get you fresh ingredients, no sweat, she murmured softly, stroking my back. Everything's gonna be fine, I promise. Jenna quickly summoned a production assistant to race out and purchase all new baking supplies from a nearby store while I tried to collect myself. I could feel Jane's smug leer burning into the back of my head from her front row audience seat. When the new, untainted ingredients finally arrived, it was time to go live. I took a few deep, calming breaths and stepped up to the cooking area, my face set in grim determination. As I got to work whipping up the salted caramel apple pie and lemon cupcake batters, I made sure to narrate each step for the viewers at home. Jenna chimed in occasionally with encouraging words about my impeccable technique. Just look at Emily's precise piping work on those cupcake swirls, folks. TV perfect if I've ever seen it. After what felt like no time at all, it was the big moment. Jenna welcomed a panel of audience members up to sample my creations live on air. I felt my heart pounding as the first taste tester, a middle-aged woman, politely took a bite of the salted caramel apple pie. I searched her face for any hint of reaction, positive or negative. The woman's eyes suddenly went wide, seemingly in surprise. "Oh my, this is just heavenly!" she exclaimed once she finally swallowed the bite. That perfect crumbly yet flaky crust, the zing of the salted caramel, good lord, it's like a flavor explosion. A giddy smile broke out across my face as the other samplers voiced similar oohs and ahs of delight at each bite. Jenna shot me a big wink and double thumbs up, clearly ecstatic her secret weapon baking guest was knocking it out of the park. I snuck a peek at Jane out in the front row, absolutely seething with her arms crossed tightly. Good, let that wretched, bitter old crone sit and stew for once, watching my success happen right in front of her hateful eyes. As the polite clapping died down, Jenna took center stage with a devilish grin. "Well folks, I think we can all agree Emily's baking is, indeed, out of this world incredible. But, what if I told you our miraculous pastry wizard overcame a last-minute act of sabotage just to dazzle us here today?" The audience let out a collective murmur of confusion. A large screen behind Jenna and I flickered to life, displaying security cam footage from earlier that morning. We watched in silence as Jane's hunched figure snuck up to my prepped workstation, looked around furtively, then proceeded to open various containers and jars, seemingly tampering with their contents. The video cut out as a deafening hush fell over the studio audience. Everyone instinctively turned to gawk at Jane sitting frozen in her front row. Finally, the silence was broken by Tom, my sweet, supportive husband, suddenly standing up and bellowing at the top of his lungs. "Enough, mother! How dare you try sabotaging Emily's big break out of your own pathetic jealousy? I'm so sorry, baby." Tom turned to me with tears in his eyes. "I'm so sorry. I never saw her toxic, abusive behavior for what it was sooner. You never deserved any of her gaslighting, manipulative behavior." The cameras panned over to Jane, absolutely pallid and shrinking into her seat in horror, as Jenna offered her the microphone and asked if she'd care to explain her sabotaging actions. For a moment, Jane just sat there frozen, silently opening and closing her mouth. But when she finally did speak, it was with a scathing venom. "You smug, ungrateful little thing." She spat out the insult directly at me, causing the audience to gasp in shock. "You think your cute little baking hobby makes you so special, huh? That this is the big break that finally earns you some undeserved self-respect?" Jane let out a high, deranged cackle. "Well, I've got a wake-up call for you, Missy. It was me who ruined that all-important catered lunch that destroyed your pathetic business. Me. From the very start, all I'd dreamed of was destroying you, your disgusting baking career, your undeserved relationship with my son, everything." Seeing Jane unravel completely into her true, unfiltered toxic self was bone-chilling. She turned her furious glare directly into the camera lens, screaming with heightened mania. "I won't let this nothing, this lazy, slovenly chef wannabe, tarnish the honor of being married into the Anderson family name any longer with her sham baking act. You hear me, Emily? I'll destroy you if it's the last thing I dash." Suddenly, Jane's hate-filled tirade was cut short by a loud thud, as Tom had charged from his seat and full-on knocked the microphone out of her hands, leaving the audiences shrieking in shock. Thereafter, Tom pulled me into a loving embrace as the audience roared their approval. I buried my face in his chest, alternating between sobs of joy and disbelief at how everything had unfolded. That TV appearance was a total game-changer for my life and career. Turns out, people just can't get enough of baking drama mixed with unhinged family meltdowns. Jenna's baking show scored its highest ratings ever from all the insanity that went down. TV bloggers and reviewers raved about what an unscripted television milestone it was. Clips from the episode, particularly Jane's deranged rant where she admitted sabotaging me, went viral almost instantly. Overnight, I became known as the long-suffering baking blogger who finally stood up to her evil mother-in-law from hell. It was honestly overwhelming, my little online baking tips channel getting that much mainstream exposure. Dude, this is nuts. I've already gained like 200,000 new YouTube subscribers just from that TV fiasco. I showed Tom the numbers a few days later, still in disbelief. Brands started hitting me up about sponsorship opportunities. Television talent scouts DM'd about potentially hosting my own show someday. It was a wildly surreal experience being lifted up in the aftermath of what had been one of the most traumatizing, horrific days of my life. Is this really happening? I marveled aloud while reading a lucrative sponsorship offer out loud to Tom one night over glasses of celebratory wine. Am I actually a full-on celebrity baker now? Tom grinned and clinked my glass. You're damn right, baby. And you earned every ounce of it with your crazy talent and mental toughness to endure all this from you-know-who for so long. I felt myself blush at the high praise. Looking back, maybe all that torment had been a blessing in disguise. The thing that truly compelled me to hone my craft with laser focus, while simultaneously developing the thick skin needed to endure hurtful critics and naysayers. Jane had been the ultimate naysayer, and I had still managed to make my baking dream a success in spite of her. As for Jane herself, let's just say between the public humiliation of having her abusive behavior exposed so rawly, and Tom completely cutting her out of our lives, she ended up retreating back to whatever sad little hell dimension she crawled out of. Without so much as a text or call from her, we quietly packed up and moved out of the home to completely cut ties. We found a beautiful new place we could truly make our own, splurging on upgrades here and there thanks to my booming influencer income.